Paula Peeters is a nature journalist, writer, artist and ecologist who's based in Beechmont, Queensland. She uses imagination, first-hand observations and scientific knowledge to create compelling stories and images of Australian nature. Paula has a PhD in botany, zoology and ecology, busy, and worked as a scientist for 13 years in the field of wildlife conservation. Since 2015, Paula has focused on teaching nature journaling as a way to improve our connection to nature and on writing an illustration that celebrates Australian nature. She has created and self-published 3 colouring books, Thimblebox, Wonderland, Riverina, Grasslands Rambling, and The Southern Bell Frog Story. 2 books about nature journaling, which is Make a Date with Nature and Take This Book for a Walk, and a work of fiction for children 8 to 12 years, which is Stories from the Wild World. 2 more colouring books on threatened Australian ecosystems and a nature journal compilation are planned for release in 2022. So Paula also regularly collaborates with the Department of Education in Queensland, the University of the Sunshine Coast and the Gold Coast and Brisbane City Councils, and a range of other community groups to teach nature journaling to a diverse audience across Southeast Queensland and beyond. And I will share one at the end of the session, if Paula's happy for me to, her website and email address for anybody to get in contact. Is that fine, Paula?
Yeah, that's great. Yep.
So thank you so much for joining us today. I'll just quickly say who I am so people know who I am. So I'm Sarah. I'm from Yarra Ranges Council. I'm the Sustainable Design Officer. We've also got Suzanne Burville here today, who my colleague works in and across departments to help us with things like webinars. Let's hand over to Paula.
Okay. Thanks so much, Sarah and Suzanne and Yarra Ranges Council for putting on this webinar. It's great to be talking to a whole lot of people, and it's great to extend hopefully the nature journaling joy down to the Yarra Ranges and beyond in Victoria. So today what we're going to do is it's an introduction to nature journaling session. So it's really aimed at I know there's probably going to be a lot of people out there with a range of different art backgrounds or science backgrounds or nature backgrounds, whatever, but this is aimed at the absolute beginner drawing person. So if you've turned up and you think you can't draw, well, we're going to show you that you can. And I'm going to give you some tools that you can use in your nature journaling. You know, we don't have a lot of time, but we're going to be doing some exercises where you'll be drawing as well. And by the end of the session, hopefully you've got some things and some inspiration about nature journaling to get you going and to realise that it's a very simple practice, but it's actually quite profound too. It's very interesting, I think. So in terms of what nature journaling is, I define it really broadly. I define it as drawing or writing in response to nature. So that can encompass taking down observations and identifying species. That is a really scientific way to do your nature journaling, but it also could encompass looking at the aesthetics and looking at sort of the more artistic side of it. You can make your nature journal really objective, or you can make it very personal, or you can mix it all up together. So I wouldn't want to put any boundaries on what you do with your nature journaling. So before I start though, I always like to, in my nature journaling workshops, get all of us reflecting on place. Now this is interesting doing a webinar because we'll all be in different places, obviously. When I run a nature journaling session in real life, I always make sure it's outside and we always reflect on the place where we're at the time. So I'll be reflecting on this lovely place where I live. This is Beechmont in southeastern Queensland. And as we go through this exercise, maybe you can think about how you can find out about your place. Some of you probably know a lot about your place, maybe others not so much. But I think reflecting on place is really the start of our nature journaling journey. So when I think about Beechmont, I think about in Queensland, the people who live here now, the fact that European settlers came to Beachmont fairly recently in Australian history terms, probably less than 200 years ago. And they were mostly the timber cutters, and then people did cattle grazing and that sort of thing, dairy farming. But then what was here before European settlement, it was mostly in this place where I'm sitting now, it was mostly subtropical rainforest mixed in with tall eucalypt forest. A lot of that was cleared, but you'll see a lot of the background of our place, we're trying to revegetate it. But stretching out before that, of course, there was the long history of the Indigenous people of this place, and I'm sitting in Yugambeh land. So it was a Yugambeh language group that were here in this place, and they probably were here for at least 60,000 years, possibly up to 100,000 years. So I think Sarah has, can everyone see that, Sarah, that you've put up that text? Yeah. So what I've got here is what I'm running through now. So Yugambeh people, the landscape I'm on was created by the Tweed volcano, which was active about 23 million years ago. And then because I'm interested in plants and animals as well as people, I like thinking about the lineages of plant and animal species that are here in this place now that have stretched back a really long way. So we have lots of songbirds in our garden. We have lyrebirds down the road in Lamington National Park. And songbirds evolved in Australia about 30 million years ago. And then going back beyond that, we have plants like eucalyptus and banksia and birds like the black cockatoo, where our oldest evidence of the age of those lineages dates them at about 50 million years ago. So that sort of blows my little mind a bit. First of all, considering the long history of the Indigenous people here, that blows my mind enough, trying to imagine 60,000 years of continuous human occupation of this land. And I like to think about it in terms of those individual people living lives not too dissimilar to us, you know, getting born, growing up, exploring their country, learning to live with other people, or maybe fight with other people, or fall in love with other people and make babies and look for food and eventually die, and doing that for generations and generations here. But then when I think back to the plant and animal lineages, these plant and animals like eucalyptus banksia, the cockatoos, the songbirds, being around for tens of millions of years in this place. And then down in the backyard, we've got some hoop pines and bunya pines, though that lineage has been around for about 180 million years. So I suppose what I'm trying to get across to you, if you're tuning in from a part of Australia, in Australia, we have this really long ancient history of our biota that's been around doing its thing, interacting with each other before humans even evolved. And I think that's something to reflect upon and be very proud of. And if you can find out about your place, find out what Indigenous country you're on, what landscape you're on. That's a really interesting one. But also look around at some of the elements of nature around you now and find out, are these things introduced to Australia? Are they native? Try and find out a bit more about how long they've been there, and that will sort of enrich your understanding of your place, I think. And in most parts of Australia, you can try and access information about what native vegetation was here before European settlement, because one of the advantages of Australia being a recently settled place in terms of European settlement is that we still have a lot of native vegetation that is intact, dating back to what was here when prior to European settlement. So that's not the case in some other places in the world. So you can usually find out a bit more about what native vegetation used to be here just over 200 years ago. Anyway, I better not keep rattling on about that because we've got some drawing to do and some nature journaling to do. So, like I said before, nature journaling I define very broadly as drawing or writing in response to nature. And we're going to focus a bit more on the drawing in this session, just because it's a short session and we can't cover everything, but we will try and squeeze in a bit of writing if we get there. So I think you've been asked, well, first of all, let's talk about drawing. I usually say in my face-to-face sessions, how do you feel about drawing, everybody? And I always get Did you hear that really weird bird? We've got this grey shrike thrush that has got a really strange voice. If people are tuning in who know their bird calls and are wondering what that is, it's a grey shrike thrush that's doing some weird things around here. Anyway, let's keep going on about the nature journaling. You'll probably hear that bird in the background because it's got a really loud voice. What was I saying? Okay, I usually say to people, how do you feel about drawing? And I get this whole range of responses. Probably you folks, everyone tuning in, I'll have people going, yeah, I love it. I'll have people going, oh, I don't know if I can do that. And I'll have everything in between. And that's fine. The thing about drawing, what's really look closely at what you're wanting to draw, and you need to be able to put those details down on the page. Now that sounds really simple, but for some people it's harder than others, and that whole looking closely thing can be quite difficult. So we're going to do some exercises that try and get you looking closely. The weird thing about drawing and art in our culture is that some people think you can either draw or you can't, which is not correct. It's actually a skill that you can learn like any other skill, but we seem to, some of us seem to think you just can't do it. And that's a shame. And because that means a lot of us stop drawing when we're quite young. And I hear lots of horror stories about people who've encountered art teachers that they felt really discouraged them, or, you know, other people in their lives when they were kids that made them stop. So what happens if you stop learning or doing a skill when you're very young? If you pick up a pencil now and say you stopped drawing when you were 7, your drawing will look like a 7-year-old's. You know, that's just what it is. And there's nothing wrong with that. In fact, lots of 7-year-old drawings are really cool. So the other thing is we shouldn't expect perfect results straight away if we're learning a new skill. So be patient with yourself. Having said that, I'm sure there's a lot of people out there who probably do quite a bit of art and drawing as well. So our first exercise is going to be contour drawing. Now, what you've been asked to bring, hopefully those of you who got the list of things to bring, you've been asked to bring things like a leafy branch. I've got this branch of eucalyptus here. I think it's Sydney blue gum that I picked up off the road this morning. I think you were asked to bring some individual leaves. Once again, I think they're Sydney blue gum leaves, Eucalyptus saligna. We get some really interesting colours around here, so I picked up a few of them. And the other thing, like I think it was a leafy branch or a floral arrangement. Yeah, I've still got some dahlias in my yard from the summer. They're really great up here. Nothing seems to destroy them, even if we do get torrential rain for weeks on end. Anyway, so for your contour drawing, so grab whatever you're drawing with today, a pen or a pencil and a bit of paper or your journal or whatever you got. That's all you need to get started. Let's get really simple. But the thing you want to be drawing has to be quite complex. So I'd say if you've got a leafy branch, either do the leafy branch or do your floral arrangement. And the reason, and so what we're going to do is we're going to do a blind contour drawing and we're going to produce some abstract plants. So I'll warn you ahead of time, your drawing is not going to look precisely like the thing. It's going to look abstract. And the reason for that is because you're not allowed to look at your page. Now, this may sound like torture, and for some people it will be, but the whole idea of a blind contour drawing, the reason I do this to you is that if you're doing a drawing of this thing and you're a bit worried about what your drawing will look like, you might look at your page a lot, okay? And you might keep rubbing stuff out and do a bit of fussing and that sort of thing. That's completely normal. But with the blind contour drawing, you don't have to worry about what your drawing is going to look like because it can't look like the thing because you're not looking at your page, right? So what that means is your eyes are going to stay on the thing you're drawing, and hopefully you're going to be fascinated and absorbed by all the detail that you're seeing, okay? So I want you to, if you're drawing a leafy branch, I want you to start from the bottom, or start from anywhere actually, but the whole idea is to sort of do the outline. So for leafy branches, you know, outline of stem, outline of petiole, that's the bit that attaches the leaf, outline of leaf. If you want to draw the leaf veins, that's great. The other thing I should say is don't take your pen or pencil off the page. So don't look at your page. Don't take your pen or pencil off the page. You want to do one continuous line, and that means your line's going to cross over each other, and that's absolutely fine. That's all part of it. You'll see with the PowerPoint slide that Sarah's put up, I've added some pictures there of contour drawings that I've done, and that's what they look like. I think they're really lovely. They look like abstract drawings of plants. And the reason we're starting with this today, it's like a warm-up. It's like you starting to look at something in detail and starting to try not to worry about what your picture looks like. But just keep in mind, when you're doing this, just be aware of what your mind's doing. So some of you will love it. You'll just go, oh, this is just the best thing ever. And your pen will just wander over the page and you'll get absorbed in the subject. And that's one response. There's no right or wrong, by the way. Some of you will find it excruciatingly difficult and you'll really, really want to look at your page. That's absolutely fine too. Just be aware of that voice in your head, because if we can lessen that worry about what your drawing is going to look like and increase your observation of the thing, your drawing is going to get a lot better, okay? Because they're the two main elements, close observation of the thing and getting that onto the page and not worrying too much about the end product. Anyway, enough talking. What I'm going to do is I'm going to draw my leafy branch. Now, in fact, I might draw my floral arrangement just because it's a bit hard for me to hold my leafy branch and draw at the same time. I hope you're set up to do what you can do. And I'll give you we'll see how it goes, maybe up to 5 minutes on this little exercise. So let's just have a go and try and enjoy it. And I will stop talking because I'm hoping that you can have a bit of an experience of a quiet time drawing and getting absorbed in the thing you're drawing, okay?
I don't know if you can see mine, Paula. I've turned out a sausage branch.
A sausage branch. Let's have a look.
Can you see that?
I can see it really. Oh, hang on, I can just see it really tiny on my screen. I don't know how to put the screen up. Oh, I think it looks great. Yeah, nice one. If someone does a contour drawing and it looks too much like the thing, they cheated, Well done. Was that hard? How did you find that, Sarah? What did that feel like doing that?
Oh, I will say that was very frustrating not being able to get, I suppose, the detail. I quite like being able to define things, and but it was really interesting focusing in on things like the leaves that I've got tears in them because they're all dry leaves. And so focusing on where those roots are and actually just trying to imagine how to capture that and just letting it happen. So some of them turned out okay. So that was really interesting seeing that. Yeah, I don't know if you can see my quite interesting tears in the leaves.
No, I can't see that. Oh, I can't see that on screen now, but I'll believe you. Okay. So do you think you noticed more by doing that exercise, Sarah? Do you think you noticed more because you weren't looking at your page, or?
Yeah, I think so. I think it was also just that removing the, needing to stop and pick up an eraser and like get a line right and, redoing it and rehashing it again and again.
Yeah, that's right. And so, it's we'll talk about that a bit more when we talk about drawing with ink, but it allows you to do more drawing and look more closely at the thing. I'll show you what my thing ended up looking like. So this is the dahlias, and that's my contour drawing. So see that, but it's an abstract. Hang on, let's put it up really close so people can see. That's what it is. That's a contour drawing. And the thing is, I think, like I said before, I think contour drawings are really lovely because they do capture the essence of whatever you're drawing, even though they're not, photorealistic. And the thing is with this, you can add some colour to that. You can leave it as it is. The other thing you can do is you can start off, sometimes what happens is with me, if I get to a place where I want to do some drawing and I might have rushed to get there or whatever, and I'm not really settled, I don't really have my brain tuned in, what you can do is you can do something like this first as like a kind of warm-up, and then there's nothing stopping you doing them in a different style. So sometimes what I've done is, say you want to draw a forest or a landscape, maybe do the first few lines as a contour drawing and then add other stuff to it. So there's a lot you can do with that. Yeah. Suzanne, did you have a go?
I did have a go, and I must warn you, I'm a bit of a perfectionist, so you're probably not going to be able to see. I'm probably not going to be able to see that. I don't know if you can spotlight my.
Yeah, give me a moment.
Spotlight my.
Give me a moment. I will just pull it up.
I actually did 3.
Oh, wow.
Wasn't happy with my first one, and I did. I'm going to confess, I peaked a little bit. I peaked a little bit on the first one.
Yeah, okay. Of course, it's really hard not to look when you're not used to it. Yeah.
But I only used the corner of my eye.
That's still cheating, Suzanne, but I can understand it. And oh, look at that. Yeah, I can see that. My video's a bit wobbly, but I can see that. Yep.
So the second one was a little bit easier because it was such a strong shape, and I could just, like a Christmas tree, really. If you're a child drawing a Christmas tree, you would imagine it like that. And then my other one was, I don't know if I can get this plant under here. Whoops.
Yeah.
It's some kind of ferny plant, and that is so straggly and messy. It didn't matter what that looked like in the end. I think this is a good exercise for people like me who strive for perfection, and I aspire to have a really loose, scrappy, scribbly style, which is interesting.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I'm glad you said that because once again, I'm not sort of saying fill your journal with contour drawings, but it's to try and get you drawing a bit more loosely and a bit more and getting not so hung up about what the thing looks like in the end. And the reason I do this is because I think it's the essence of nature journaling for me is the experience you have, not so much the product. Don't get me wrong, I do a lot of different types of drawing. And I do a lot of art commissions where the product has to be, or the end drawing has to be precise. So I do a lot of precise drawing too. But for me, the joy of nature journaling is to get outdoors in nature with a little book and just spend some time focusing in, connecting in with nature and enjoying your time there rather than stressing out about producing a perfect page. Okay, so I'm trying to lead you into that sort of experience and getting a taste of that if you can. Let's do the next thing, which is what is called.
Can I jump in there, Paula? I've got,
yeah, sure.
got a comment in the Q&A from someone. Thanks, Suzanne, in the Q&A for saying loved it. It was not looking kept her going. So that's great. Thanks, Suzanne. And I will just remind people.
Thank you for that feedback.
We've got a few people with their hands up. We aren't in a position today to allow people to talk. So if they need to make any comments, those with their hands up, please share something through the Q&A and we can respond that way. So thanks for those joining along. So I'll hand back to you, Paula.
Thanks, Sarah. Yeah, let's do the next thing, which is a modified contour drawing. And that's, you're allowed to look at the page. For this one, I think I'm going to try and draw this leaf with all these knobbly bits. Leaves are great things to draw. In the Australian environment, you can almost certainly find a leaf at just about any time of the year, and they're all different. So, yeah, and they're quite simple to draw because they're sort of two-dimensional in a way. So I'm going to do a modified contour drawing of this wiggly leaf, leaf with wiggly things on it. So you can look at your page, but just one continuous line. So let's have a go at that one. And if you're drawing a leaf, try and draw the internal structure and the veins if you can see them. Let's see. So this exercise, once again, is kind of a loosening up thing. And of course, because it's one continuous line, your line's going to cross over itself, and that is absolutely fine. That's what it's about. Okay. So here's my modified contour drawing of that leaf with the bumps on it. Okay. Once again, it's quite a loose style of drawing. Let's see if I can put, there we go. And I'd like to say at this point too that one of the great things about drawing is a drawing is not a photo. Okay, I think our lives these days are saturated by photos, and just about everyone's got a really flash camera in their mobile phone that they've got on them all the time. And the great thing about a drawing is it can be done in all sorts of different ways, not just photorealistic. So if you want to learn how to draw in a photorealistic style, that is great, and it's a great challenge, and I encourage you to do that. But keep in mind that drawings can be all sorts of other things. And the other interesting thing about drawing is that sometimes the simpler drawings are the most powerful. So if you think about maybe your favourite cartoon, that is not going to be a photorealistic style of drawing, yet it can be emotionally powerful and a really effective way to portray a character or a subject or that sort of thing. Yeah, so remember that drawing is not a photo. And I think one of the differences, I think, between nature journaling and something like botanical art is a lot about that precision and intent. So if you're interested in drawing something as, you know, as gorgeous as this in a very precise, detailed, realistic style, that is great. That's more like botanical art. But I know botanical artists that'll take a week to draw something like this. It's a different discipline. Whereas with nature journaling, to me, it's a lot about your connection to nature and playing around and being relaxed about what your drawing will look like in the end. That's just my definition. Other people probably have different definitions of nature journaling. So how'd you go, Sarah and Suzanne? Did you have a go at that one?
I did. I'll jump in. Sorry, Suzanne. I was just studying my leaf again. I don't know if I can show you that one. So this was my leaf, which was very colourful.
Oh, nice one. You've got some sort of eucalyptus. Yep.
Yeah,
Beautiful.
it's from our next door neighbour's tree. But just, I'm loving the colours of it losing its green.
Yeah.
That was, but so I struggled again to just have that single line and not take the pencil off the page, but it really nice to just, I love the eucalyptus leaf shape. They're just so beautiful to draw.
They're very elegant. They're very elegant shapes.
Excellent. Okay, great. Well, I hope those of you tuning in felt a bit more of the freeing effect of that modified.
I've actually got some feedback for you, Paula. So I've got from Erica that she feels like she can actually draw for the first time in forever, which is
I'm so excited. Thanks, Erica. So good to hear that.
And we've got Meredith, who said that a cute little native fly, a tiny one, came off her leaf and danced on her page.
Fantastic. And you see, this is what happens once you start looking, once you slow down and you start looking closely at nature, you see all sorts of stuff. And drawing is like a tool to get into that doorway and get into that frame of mind, because with drawing you really do have to slow down and look closely to get all those details. So like I said, simple practice, but sometimes with quite profound results. Now I realise time is ticking on.
So
you got something else?
I've got a couple more, but along the same vein. We've got someone who's surprised themselves and someone who's normally very, very similar to Suzanne, likes to get it right, and they've loved the result of what they've done. So
look, I'm so glad to hear that. Yeah. And once again, you can draw in all sorts of ways. So if you want to spend a week drawing a vase of flowers, there's nothing wrong with that. That's great. But with your nature journaling, relax, have fun, see what comes out. Now, I did have lined up on that sheet PowerPoint I sent you, Sarah, I did have the speed drawing instructions on there, but I don't think we'll actually do them because time is ticking on and I'd like to cover a few other things. But the principle of the speed drawing, once again, it's trying to loosen you up and get you thinking about drawing in different ways. And that's when you have a subject, probably a simple subject to be good, like a leaf or a gum nut or a fruit or something like that, and you try and draw it in 5. So we're not going to run through that now, but maybe after the webinar, have a go at that. It's a really fun exercise. And sometimes what happens with people is they often find, try and ask yourself which of those speed drawings you're happiest with. And often people come up with all sorts of different answers to that, but it seems that drawing something at speed, once again, reduces your critical part of your mind and you're doing it a little bit more naturally. It's a bit like maybe, if you're trying to play tennis or something, you don't logically think through all the steps you need to hit that ball. It's just when the ball comes to you, you do everything you need to hit it. And I think when you try and do speed drawing, maybe it bypasses some of those more cognitive parts of your brain and goes into the more natural parts of your brain, and then you do it more easily. So have a play with that in your own time, I think.
So what were the three different speeds? Because we haven't seen the PowerPoints, so people can practice that later. What are the 3 different time frames?
So it's 5 seconds, 10 seconds and 15 seconds, and you just count them off in your head. Don't mess about with putting timers on because that just gets in the way. So just, and do it with the same object. So just see and start off with the 15 and get to the faster and just see what you get out of that. It's a really fun thing to do. The other thing you can do is my first book, Make a Date with Nature, you can download for free from my website as an ebook. So I think Sarah and Suzanne will be sharing the link to the website at the end of the webinar. And that's got some of these exercises in it as well, and also some writing exercises. Okay, so now I think it might be good just to demonstrate some materials, because I know we said that as part of the workshop, we do that. And then I'm going to try and finish up the workshop talking about the nature journaling prompts. which are a way to generate a whole lot of thoughts and ideas about what you're journaling. So first of all, what I've been using so far in my nature journal today has been permanent ink. And the reason I draw with ink, it took me about 40 years to figure this out, but I'm a slow learner. But the reason I draw with ink is because you can't rub it out, and that's really counterintuitive, right? You know, so most of us, like I said, up until you know, a few years ago, no, I was drawing with pencil. And there's nothing wrong with drawing with pencil. One of my favorite things to draw with is actually a mechanical pencil. I know some artists will be horrified by this because they like having a wooden pencil that you can sharpen in a particular way, so you get a nice kind of tip and everything. That doesn't appeal to me. I don't know why, but you know, like I said, there's no right or wrong. If you like your wooden graphite pencil, just go with it. It's good to have a weight of lead, which is a 2B or up. When I say 2B up, 2B or softer, so 2B or 4B or something like that, just because then you can get some nice darks into your picture as well as lights. So for years, I loved my mechanical pencil, and I still love my mechanical pencil. So it's pretty basic. I'll just draw a little bit with that and do the darks to the lights. So this is just a little bit of drawing with your mechanical pencil. Ooh, maybe you can see that. You can get a gradation from light to dark. And the great thing is you can rub it out. I'm diverging here. This is not my favourite way of drawing anymore, but this is how I started. And if you
sorry, we've got someone who's asked what a mechanical pencil is. So.
Oh, look, good question. So you can buy a lot of these at newsagents or office works or art shops or whatever. What it is it's like got a plastic outer case, and it's got a graphite lead. Woo, look at that. There you go. That comes out the tip. Okay, so graphite is the same thing that you get in a black lead pencil, but it has because it's got this really fine lead, it produces a very fine line, and you can get the leads in different softnesses. So you can get HB leads or 2B leads or that sort of thing. Okay, and you get the so that's a mechanical pencil versus a traditional wooden pencil. What was I going to say? Erasing. Yeah. So if you things are really cool, that's like an eraser in a little pen thing. And you know why that's cool? Because two reasons. One is you get a fairly precise tip, but the other thing is, if you have this in your pencil case, you can retract the tip and keep it clean, because all of us have probably had the experience of picking up an eraser that's dirty and it leaves a big smear on your page. So I'm not a big fan of plastic, but this is actually a really good use of plastic. Either that or have another eraser that you just try and keep clean somehow so you don't get those smutty marks on your page. Let's throw...
Paula, I've got a top tip for cleaning your erasers. If people have done this before, is that you can run them on carpet and it will clean your eraser off.
I didn't know that. That's very cool. Thanks for that. So keep that in mind. If you need to clean your eraser on the carpet, keep a bit of a carpet in your pencil case, maybe.
Yeah.
Love that. Thanks, Sarah.
Way to go. Have a nice or a carpet covered pencil case.
Oh, now there's a good idea too. Yeah. Okay. Lots of ideas in this webinar. I'm loving it. But having said all that, okay, so these are the tools more or less that I use when I'm doing my art commissions. So if somebody's commissioned me to produce a colouring book all about frogs, which has happened in the past, and you want that frog to look like the southern bell frog, I will draw it in a graphite pencil and I'll rub it out till I get it right. Then I'll go over it in ink. However, nature journaling doesn't have to be precise. Woohoo, that's why it's fun. So when I started drawing with ink, it was so much more fun because you get that really nice sharp line. You're forced to draw more because you can't rub out your mistakes, okay? And that's challenging to start with, it really is. But try and have a look around at other people's drawings and different drawings you see around, and you'll see that a lot of drawings have got lots of different lines, and they're not all perfect, and they're not. So here's an example. So these are some drawings I did at the Western Plains Zoo in Dubbo the other day, and see how they're sort of scratchy and sketchy, but in the end you get there, okay? And so what happens is you just keep drawing, you get happy with your mistakes, and then you can add watercolor or wet materials to it later, because the ink doesn't, if you use permanent ink, it doesn't run when you add your wet materials. So when you are looking for an ink pen, you can start off with these sort of fine liners, they're called. There's different brands, okay? So what's this? I'm not advocating any particular brand. You can get like an Art Line, you can get a Copic, blah, blah, blah. What's this? This is a Pigma Micron. What they all share is permanent ink and a felt tip that's really fine, okay? There's a really fine tip at the end. So that will produce a very consistent line that tends to that. I got a bit sick of throwing plastic out, because once these are empty, you can't do anything with them. You have to throw them away. So I invested in this sort of pen, which is a fountain pen, but it doesn't have a cartridge. It actually is refillable, and you stick it in the ink and you twist the top and it sucks the ink up. So this is called a TWSBI Eco Pen. I've only found it available online, but that's quite an investment. They're quite expensive. So with all these art materials, if you're just starting with nature journaling, start with some cheap stuff, see if you like it. If you really get into it, invest in the expensive stuff, because it's very easy to go into an art shop or Officeworks or something and just buy up big, and then, you know, you may not ever use that stuff. So let's add a bit of colour to the contour drawing, and the way I'm going to do that is with watercolour pencils. Lots of different brands of watercolour pencils. There's a range of different qualities out there. I'm going to be using these ones, which are Faber-Castell Albrecht Dürer. That's like the artist quality Faber-Castell watercolour. But once again, start off cheap, see if you like it, then move on to the more expensive stuff if you want. And start off with a big part of my work at the moment is, this is for my work, tax deduction. Yeah. So what you do with a watercolour pencil is they can, I'll just draw on the page. Obviously you can't see this, but the great thing about a watercolour pencil is that you can use it as a conventional pencil. So I'm not sure if you can see that. I've just added some pencil to my contour drawing. And colour pencils are great because you can lay them over the top of each other, and you can produce different colours and all that sort of thing. But then you can add some water, and this is a water brush that's got water in it. That's pretty cool, and it's very good for nature journaling because it's portable. But you can just use a brush and a jar of water, that's fine too. And if we add some water to this watercolour pencil, you can spread it much more over the page. Okay. So now when you look at that page, I've spread the watercolour pencil over the page, and it looks a little bit more like watercolour. Of course, you can add other colours to that. You can add them as dry pencils first and then use the water to combine them or blend them. The other thing you can do is you can wet your page and then draw the watercolour pencil over the top of it, and you get a very firm and I tend to, in my drawing, I tend to do the line first and then add the colour, but there's nothing to stop you doing the colour first and adding a bit of line. That's just my personal preference, but explore and have fun and see, you know, what you're interested in.
Watercolour pencils are different than just normal pencils, aren't they? I think I've seen Derwent have watercolours.
That's right, yeah. So the great thing about them is you can use them as a conventional pencil, but then when you add water, they become more soluble. Yeah, so that's the advantage of it. So they just got that flexibility. So there's nothing to stop you adding colour just with coloured pencils, because the coloured pencils these days are fantastic. They're so much better than they were years ago, and you can still blend colours and you can get some brilliant effects with that. But just, yeah, the watercolour pencils give you that extra flexibility. Whatever type of pencil you get, make sure you do yourself one of these little sheets. Okay, I made this myself because curiously the manufacturers, and what I've done here is that I've put little bits of colour on the sheet and then I've wet part of it and I've put the name of the pencil on. Curiously, the manufacturers of pencils, they seem to be doing some funny joke with us that the colour of the outside of the pencil often doesn't look anything like the colour it looks like on the page. I don't know why that is. But of course, this changes too if you're using different coloured paper too. So yeah, it can be handy if you want a particular colour, just to know which pencil to grab out of the box. And as you use your art materials more and more, you'll become more and more familiar with it, and you probably won't need this as much. But this is a really useful little tool. Same goes for some sort of watercolour paints, actually. And speaking of watercolour paints, so with Nature Journaling, try and keep it simple and portable. This is a little pack of watercolour paints I got years ago. I'm still using it. I think it's a Cotman or a Winsor & Newton or something like that. But it's very groovy. Look at that. It just folds away. You don't need much. And when I started using watercolours, I was terrified because I have to mix my own colours. But, you know, that's part of the journey. So it's part of learning how to do it. Once again, you'll need some water and a paintbrush, but you can use your water brush straight into your watercolour thingy, your watercolour paint. And you can mix in this side if you want, or wet your page first, and to clean your brush. Some people, so I just go straight on my hand, just wipe it on there. And that seems to work. And I like these brushes because I always have trouble when I'm using brushes regulating the amount of water I've got on them, and I get myself into a horrible mess. And I find these brushes are much more regulated and they often have a really fine tip. So I'm a bit of a fan of these now. So I added a bit of watercolour to my page and it's looking like that now. So that's just with two colours, but I could add more to that and end up with a really lovely image. The thing is with nature journaling, it can take a long time if you want to fill up a page and then add colour. It can take hours, you know, and that can be great fun if you've got the hours. But sometimes what happens is we get a bit stressed out, or I get a bit stressed out, and I've heard other people do too. If you start a page and then you can't finish it, you feel like, oh, there's all these unfinished pages in my journal, you know. But, you know, just get used to it, you know. This is my zoo journal. It's all uncoloured. This is because I've been commissioned to do a nature journaling book for the Dubbo Zoo, which is really exciting, all on sketching things, and that's absolutely fine. But one of the great things to do when you're beginning, start little. Okay, there's a Strathmore mixed media book. This is a moleskin, doesn't matter, just start off with something. But in terms of size, let's talk about size. So the great thing about this sort of book is that, yeah, okay, this still took me a little bit of time doing these pages, but you can finish your page a lot quicker if you want to get that sense of completion. And why not start really small, you know? So if you think you don't have time for nature journaling, get yourself one of these and just have it in your challenge with a pen. And so while you're waiting at the traffic lights or whatever, instead of looking at your phone, do a little drawing in this. I have the little drawing in here somewhere. Let me see. So this is on a bushwalk. I just did some drawings of birds when I went for a bushwalk.
So that's about the size of your hand, is it?
Yeah, that's like half A5. So this is about A5, although it's landscape. So it's a bit
there'd be A6. A6. It would be A6.
Yeah, that's an A6. Yeah. And that's like an A5, but it's a bit longer.
So I haven't seen
A4.
A4, yeah. I do work on an A5.
Yeah.
I find A5 is a good size,
Yep.
but
Yeah.
I haven't seen the A6 in Officeworks. That would be a good one, because I have the problem of, if I'm out in nature, I feel like I have to do the whole scene. So maybe having a small book can just make me go, no, well, I've just got this small page. I just have to do something small. Hopefully not a small scene.
Absolutely. Yeah. And if you're feeling overwhelmed, don't forget these wonderful things. They are really good. If you're feeling overwhelmed, do some leaves. They're the most wonderful things. But, equally do a flower, find a bug, just draw one element of the scene. The other thing I want to mention is paper types. So if you're drawing with graphite or ink, you can probably get away with a fairly cheap visual journal that you can get from, newsagents, Officeworks, whatever, with fairly thin paper. But if you want to move into wet materials like watercolour pencils and paints, it's much better if you do buy something like one of these little books that is, I think this was a specifically watercolour book. So the difference with watercolour paper is that it's thicker, it doesn't buckle when it gets wet, and you won't see through to the other side. If you get a really classy journal, it'll have cotton-derived paper, which is archival quality as well. So, but once again, the price goes up. So if you're beginning, just start with anything and have a go and see if you like it. And then if you really like it, move on to the more expensive stuff.
I picked up one in Officeworks, under $10. It's got like a material cover. It does have, it is a watercolour, really thick paper. So that was in Officeworks, less than $10.
Fantastic.
And I must say, I started off with some cheap.
And there's a greater range.
Sorry, go on.
Yeah, there's a greater range out there. I was just going to say, than there used to be.
And I personally started with just a cheap set of watercolours from Officeworks, and probably about after a year, I decided I was ready to invest in a more expensive paint set. So, I was perfectly happy just starting off with a few cheap things and seeing how I went.
Yeah, and that's a great approach. Because you can spend a lot of money on expensive materials that you don't use, and get yourself some nice stuff if you can afford it. It took me about 48 years to realise my drawing was worth a nice hardcover journal. It's funny how we do these things to ourselves. We think, oh no, this is an expensive book. I can't draw in it. That's the sort of thing I used to think, and I don't know if you're thinking that too, but no, if you can afford some nice stuff and you do want to use this as a special part of your life, get something special and say, my drawing is good enough for this book, even if it's just all contour drawing, I'm worth it. So let's just finish off on another activity. Are you happy if I keep going? I know we've gone past an hour, Sarah and Suzanne. Just one more activity.
No, we've got an hour and a half.
We've got an hour and a half.
Beautiful.
We've got an hour and a half today.
And we'll leave some time for questions at the end. Okay, so we're going to do the nature journaling prompts. Now, I didn't do a slide of these, Sarah, I'm sorry, but I have got them in this book. Okay. So these are the nature journaling prompts.
Yep, beautiful.
I wonder, it reminds me of, and it makes me feel. Okay. So we'll run through them with, use one of your nature things to run through them, either your flowers or your leaves or your leafy branch, which I think has fallen off. Oh, here it is. Woohoo. Now these prompts, the first three have been promoted widely by John Muir-Laws, who's a nature journaling guru from California. Check him out if you're interested. He's got a lot of stuff online, does some fabulous things. They're really good prompts because they get you thinking and get you asking questions and reflecting on memories and all sorts of stuff. So, and I added a fourth one. So John's prompts I notice, I wonder, it reminds me of, and I add, it makes me feel, because I like to sort of explore the touchy-feely side too. So I'm going to run through my leafy branch, and as we're going, you have a look at your own things you got in front of you, and let's see if we can get some ideas going. The idea of this is, what you'd probably do is, you'd probably do a drawing of this first, so you're already looking at it, you're already tuned in, and then you'd write the responses to these nature journaling prompts around your drawing in your book. So I'm trying to introduce the writing and the thinking and all that sort of stuff into the nature journaling process as well, just in this short webinar. So, okay, so what do I notice about this leafy branch? I noticed that these spiky things are really bright green. I noticed that when I look at the leaves are like a mid-green, but they've got a yellow vein through the middle. And I noticed that each one of these buds, because these are buds, has got about between 5 and 8 individual buds on it. So have a think about your own object and see if you can come up with some I notices. The other thing about these leaves is they're different coloured on one side than the other. So this is called, the fancy term for this is discolorous. And it's actually one of the ways you pick two very similar, yeah, so the eucalypts I'm talking about are Sydney blue gum and flooded gum. One of them has got discolorous leaves, the other one hasn't. I can't remember which one is which, so I'm guessing that these are Sydney blue gum, because where I collected it, there's more Sydney blue gum than anything else. So what are you noticing? Do you have any, maybe you can write in the Q&A what you're noticing about the thing in front of you.
So I've got this beautiful, I'm assuming it's a gum, but it's so spotty. That's why I picked it up. It's a very spotty,
beautiful
leaf. So that's what I'm noticing at the moment.
I've got,
because it's, I'm taking a wild step. Exactly. Yeah, go.
Thanks, Paula. I will say we've got quite a lot of things that have popped into the Q&A, and I'll just quickly let you know, Paula, that your video has been freezing a little bit, so some people might have missed just a few things that you've said. So if people have missed anything, feel free to just pop it in the Q&A, and we'll answer it as we can. So actually, just going back to when you were talking about the different art supplies, we've got quite a lot of people that wrote in about that. One of them particularly said that Officeworks can take empty pens now for recycling. So if people are worried, if people are worried about their fine liners and things like that, once they run out, they can take them in to be recycled.
Great.
Great. So thanks for sharing that. Someone's asked if they've got Derwent artist pencils from 30 years ago. Is it worth considering replacing them to try newer ones, given you said that colour pencils are much better these days?
Yeah, I would have a go. Get yourself a look. If you really enjoy using those Derwent pencils, just keep using them, you know, because they were still really good back then in their own way. What I found with, because I had, as a kid, I had a pack of Derwent 72s or whatever, and I find now when I use them, I find them really waxy. And not very soft, and I find with coloured pencils, especially if I want to blend colours and stuff, it's really nice to have the more modern softer ones, but it depends what you want to do with them. So you might still get a lot of use out of those Derwents, but maybe buy yourself a small pack of you know, the newer Derwents and just see what the comparison is. Or I must say, for my for coloured pencils, I do prefer the Faber-Castell. They seem to be a little bit softer again, but everyone's got their own personal likes and dislikes. So just get yourself a small pack or steal one from a friend and just practice and see what you think.
I like that idea. Borrow somebody else's and see if you like it before you buy. We've got quite a lot of people saying thank you so much, that this has sort of given them the push in the right direction, or letting them know that they are already on the right track, which is great. So a lot of people are saying that this has been wonderful. Someone has said, I wonder whether ink pen will not become smudged with using water. So I wonder if that's thinking about like a normal biro or ink sort of pen. Because the fountain pen that you showed us, is that a permanent ink so it doesn't smudge with water?
Yeah, that's a really good question.
Oh, Paula, I think you're just freezing a little bit.
Oh yeah. Look, really good question. The fountain pen, this fountain pen that I'm using a very special ink, and both of these. Am I unfreeze now?
I'm just going to stop. Hello, Paula. I'm just going to stop your video because I think you're lagging just a little bit. So I'm just going to stop that for a moment.
Thanks, Sarah. Can you hear me now?
Yes, I can hear you now.
Yeah. It started raining here, and we always get this problem when it rains.
Oh, no.
Sorry about that. But rainforest, you get a lot of rain. Yes. So the pen I first held up. The pen I held up, which was the fountain pen, that's called a TWSBI Eco Pen. I'm using very special ink in that is more or less permanent, but a lot of fountain pens use inks that are water soluble. So you have to check that. I get this fountain pen from an online shop called Larry Post, and I will advocate for them because it's the only place I know these days to get this type of pen from. I think it's called DR Temis ink that is more or less permanent. When I say more or less permanent, sometimes you get a little bit of smudging with that ink, but it's not actually soluble. It's almost like I think the ink particles dry on the paper, and then when you put the water over the top, they're the little particles that smudge. But if you want really permanent ink, those fine liners are probably better. But you have to make sure that you're picking a fine liner that says permanent ink on it, or they say water insoluble. You just got to read the fine print.
Yep. Okay. Well, that's
other questions, Sarah?
Yeah, good advice on that. Yep, we've got a few questions coming through. So someone suggested when you're out and about to pick your scene that you can actually cut a hole in a piece of cardboard and use it as a viewfinder to choose a section of landscape, which I thought was a lovely idea. So thank you for that.
That is a very good idea.
Yep. Sorry, did you want to comment on that? Sorry, Paula.
I will comment on that. Thank you. That's a very good idea. And the other thing you can do with your viewfinder is not just selecting bits of landscape, but go up to a tree and select a bit of tree bark, or get down on your hands and knees and select a bit of, a ground layer view or leaf litter, or, zero into some moss on a rock or something. So, that can be used for nature journaling in all sorts of ways as a viewfinder.
Yeah, that's a great idea. I hadn't thought about going up to a tree trunk or doing a sort of a micro study of a piece of earth. That's great. We've got a few more suggestions coming through. So Suzanne in our chat has said seniors art supplies are very knowledgeable and helpful. I know seniors, they're amazing as well. So thank you for suggesting that, Suzanne, in the chat or in the Q&A. We've got another suggestion, which is someone has bought watercolour papers, the more expensive ones, but cuts each into 4 and then puts them inside a little book. And that's a nice way of making them go a bit further. So thanks for that, for sharing that idea. So we've got, someone's asked, can we get the name of the author in the chat, as the video is a little bit dodgy? So we will, Kerry, if that's the book that Paula was referring to, that she's author of, I've popped those in the chat so everybody can see those, I hope.
I think we lost Paula a bit when she talked about, I think it's John, is it John Muir's Paula?
Yeah, John Muir Laws and those nature journaling prompts. It might be a bit better now because it's stopped raining, but I'm not guaranteeing anything.
Yes, John Muir Laws has quite a few videos on YouTube as well, I believe. I have seen one or two of his.
Do you have the link, Suzanne, to that one? Do you want to share it into the chat? If you could just look that up for us so we can share that with everybody. Thanks so much for that. All right, that was a great question. We've also got which TWSBI fountain pen and mechanical pencil does Paula recommend? Paula, do you have a specific TWSBI fountain pen or mechanical pencil?
It was the TWSBI Eco pen because I think it's supposed to be eco and it was cheaper than the rest. So yeah, that was the TWSBI one. You'll find with fountain pens, some of them are exorbitantly expensive, but last time I bought a TWSBI pen, it's still expensive. It's still about $60, but it's one of the cheaper versions of a fountain pen. And with the mechanical pencil, no, I have no preference at all. It's just whatever you find comfortable in your hand. But I do, for my drawing, if I'm doing sort of freestyle drawing, I like a 2B weight lead. But if I'm doing drawing where I want to rub out that pencil line, I'll use a HB, a lighter weight lead.
Yeah, brilliant. All right. I've just got a few other questions in here. I've got, what was the word for the two-sided colour leads?
Oh, discolorous, I think,
Discolorous.
is the proper term. Discolorous, which probably just means different colour, I'd say.
Beautiful. All right. So people are making comments on that there was a bit of freezing. So I've done that. And I'm going to share, I think I might find those questions that you shared, Paula, about I wonder, I notice, it reminds me of, and it makes me feel, into the chat so that people have those written down if they want to go back to them later.
Yeah, I think that's a great idea. So just run through them for the objects in front of you, and those prompts can be used for anything. And the great thing about them is they'll generate lots of observations and questions. And the one that it reminds me of is a very interesting one because it often takes you out of the here and now, and it might take you into a memory or into another place. So for instance, if I'm doing a workshop with people and we'll be standing around a tree and I'll say, what does it remind you of? Often people say, oh, this tree used to grow in my grandma's yard or something, you know, and that can be another part of nature journaling, you know. So let's keep the boundaries of nature journaling really open. And often in nature, what will happen is you might be absorbed in the here and now and what's in front of you, but it may trigger a whole lot of more questions and reflections that take you away from that. And that's all part of it too.
Yeah, that's great. I've got a few more. People keep them coming in. We've still got 15 minutes left if people still want to pop more questions in. So I will say that Rebecca has shared that she is saying, thanks so much for this. She's just drawn and painted something that actually resembles what she was looking at for the first time in her life. So that's great to hear, Rebecca.
Yay!
Similar question to earlier, someone said that their water pencils are old and asked if they become less spreadable with age. So just saying that they don't seem to spread well. As you said earlier, would it be recommended that they perhaps try some new ones in that instance?
Look, I don't know. I haven't come across that problem myself, but the thing about watercolour pencils these days is there's a lot of different varieties. So maybe it's worth you trying some others. So there's the conventional ones that I showed you, that are just like a coloured pencil, and then you wet them and they spread across the page. You've got ones that are graphite, that are tinted. That's a Derwent line, I think. And you also have this thing called Derwent Ink Tense, and they have got really vivid colours. And so when you wet them and then let them dry, they become more permanent. So I use those a lot these days. And it's more, not so much for their permanence, but because of the vivid colours I really enjoy and the ink tints. So, and there's other varieties of watercolour pencils out there too. So, you know, yeah, if you want to explore this, there's a lot to explore and learn. Don't be put off by thinking that you have to be expert in everything, because it's actually much more fun just being a beginner and playing and having a bit of fun. So take that beginner's attitude with you, and that's a much better attitude. Yeah.
Yeah, I love that idea. It's much better to be a beginner because you've got so much to explore.
And also, I think accepting that you have your own style, accepting that your work's not going to look like other people, that you have your own perspective, and that's what I think is really important, to just accept that you have your style and it is what it is. There's nothing wrong with striving to have a slightly different style. Like me, I want to go a little bit more scrappy and messy, but accepting that, you know, it's yours and it's good.
Thanks, Suzanne. I really like that.
Paula, we've gone very mechanical voicey.
This is the essence of one of the essences of nature.
Oh no, we're losing you a little bit, Paula. You've gone very, very go slow.
Sorry.
There we go. You're back a little bit.
What about now?
Ah, there you are. That's much better. Oh, can you hear us, Paula?
Am I back a bit? Oh
yes.
Dear. Yeah,
No.
Oh, you gotta love the internet in regional Australia, don't you? No, what was it? Yeah, good. No,
you're back now.
Can you hear me now?
I think we've got a bit of lag.
Okay. Thanks, Suzanne, for that comment. I think that's what makes nature journaling unique, is that everyone has their own particular style. So your nature journal won't look like anyone else's. So just enjoy that. That's one of the unique things about it.
Beautiful. Now I've got lots of people sharing lots of beautiful things in the Q&A, saying that this has been a great way for them to spend an hour. Some people have said that they this has been outside their comfort zone, and before today they wouldn't have said that they've sat down and drawn for an hour. So that's wonderful to hear. And I've got a few other questions coming through. I've got someone asking if you come to Melbourne to do workshops, Paula.
Look, I tried pre-COVID, and then of course it all got cancelled. I would love to come to Melbourne at some stage. I don't have any firm plans at the moment, but I certainly want to do that one day. Yes.
Yeah,
and you
great.
certainly let us know if you are coming, because we would love to organise something in person out in one of our beautiful reserves in the Yarra Ranges. So do let us know if you are planning on coming down to Melbourne.
Oh, I think Paul is probably lagging a little bit again. The joys of the internet. So I will say we've got lots of people who've shared different art shops that are around locally. I won't read them all out. If you can see the Q&A, you can take note of those if you're in any of those areas. So I'd like to start saying, I think, wrapping up at this point. I think the internet is not being our friend right now with Paula. So I'll say,
well, I would love to, and I have friends and relatives in Melbourne, because that's where I grew up. And yeah, I know some of your beautiful reserves. So what am I going like a rope?
oh, Paula, can you hear us again? Paula, can you hear us? All right, I think we are losing Paula. Paula, I'm just going to put you on mute. Oh no, we've lost Paula completely.
We've lost Paula altogether.
Oh no.
That's
Oh,
okay.
goodness.
What do you want
Yes.
to flick just as we're finishing up, unless you've got any questions to answer, maybe just flick through a couple of the different styles of Paula's drawings that I
Yes.
popped into the
I will do that
PowerPoint.
now.
And I will say, someone has talked about the art shop in Bayswater, and I must say, I got a little field kit, a little paint field kit from that art shop in Bayswater.
Oh, that looks cool.
And they deliver, or you can go down there and.
And are they watercolors, Suzanne?
These are watercolors. So
Yeah, right. Okay.
These are watercolors, so it's a little field kit that you take out.
Yeah, brilliant.
And you've got the water pen, but you've also got a little sponge. So you fill up your water pen.
Yep.
And wet your sponge, and you've got everything that you need to go out in the field. So it wasn't cheap, but as I said, you know, I'm dedicated enough to spend that little bit more now. And that came from the art shop in Bayswater, and they are online. So if I can remember who they are, I'll put them in the follow-up email.
Yeah, that's great. All right. Well, I will say that I will share my screen again and share these last few things. Thanks everyone for sharing your thoughts through the Q&A and sharing what you've been talking about. I'll just finish and say that in the registration information that has been sent to you, there was a link to a photo drive, and there was also the hashtag #WhyAreNatureJournaling. Is that the hashtag, Suzanne?
That's correct.
Excellent. So if you would like to share what you have worked on today, we would love to see it, and we'll share it with Paula as well. So if you
I think we could also say not necessarily what they drew today, but maybe what they draw over the next couple of days or the next week, to see sort of what come out of this session for them.
Yeah, either or both. They could send what you've done in this session and also what you are inspired to do over the next couple of days, which would be great to see. So thank you all for joining us. What I'm going to do now is share my screen again and go through some of the artwork that Paula has on her website. If you missed it, I put in the chat the link to Paula's website as well as her email address, and you can find her on social media on Instagram and Twitter. So a big thank you all for joining us. When you exit the session at the end today, you will be taken to a survey. Please fill that out. We will be using that to decide the winner of the book. So thanks everybody, and I'm just going to finish by sharing my screen and sharing some of these pieces from.
And thank you to Paula for joining us today.
And yes, thanks Paula.
For having me. It's been great.
Oh, you're back. Sorry, I missed that you've rejoined us. There you are. Thank you so much, Paula.
Thank you, everybody, for tuning in. And remember, with nature journaling, you know, just enjoy it. It's your connection to nature and it's your unique response. There's no right or wrong. So enjoy.
Beautiful. Thanks so much, Paula. Suzanne, whilst I'm sharing my screen, do you want to put the hashtag into the chat for everybody? Because somebody's just asked, what is the hashtag?
The hashtag, and they can also email to one of our email addresses, and we will put them up on a shared drive as well.
Yeah. Do you want to pop both of those in the chat for us so that people can reach those? And just, Paula, we're just finishing, just in case you missed it, we're just going through some of those pictures that we've got from your website. So if you want to pipe up, if you can see these things, you can happily give a bit more of a description as I go through slowly.
Oh, yeah. I mean, some of these, keep in mind some of these nature journal entries, and some of these are probably things that I spent quite a lot more time on and drew from photos. But this magpie image, no, I drew that from life, and it's really worth trying to draw things from life, even though it can be really difficult because things move, but they have it has a different quality to it than if I would have drawn a magpie from a photo.
Great. Paula, you are lagging a little bit, so I might actually just in the last few minutes just move through these. If you want to pipe up, we'll land on a few of these. But I will say that when I first saw this, I was absolutely taken aback, because you just feel like you can walk into this garden for I'm looking at this picture. It's just beautifully done.
And it looks like it's pencil too, that garden, doesn't it?
Yeah. Yep. Absolutely gorgeous. And we've got, I love this. This is just beautiful. I love humor in drawings as well.
I must say, I quite often work from photos, so I'm really trying to push myself to transition to do more out in nature rather than photograph it and then come back and sit in my kitchen and do it. So that's a bit of a challenge, but something like this, obviously you probably need to reference photos or images of those birds. Yep. Unless you've got a great memory and you
can find it again.
Yeah.
And this was just so cool.
And I think that's an example of where Paula talks about filling a page, and I must say I haven't done this yet, but it's something I aspire to. And you don't need to do it all at once, I think, is the beauty of a page like this.
Well, I like looking at the bits in between, because they're squiggly lines which are sort of, you could feel like they were trees, you could feel like they were ferns or leaves or paths, but also equally you don't necessarily, like I was just looking at my work before with my pencil and my watercolors, and I got so annoyed that it was just not what I wanted it to be. But it doesn't need to be perfect, which is something that's really nice to come to terms with. Yeah. It can just be squiggly, and then when you come back to it, go, oh, it's exactly what it needed to be. But yes, the filling of pages is great.
I think that's a key thing that I've learned too, is sometimes when I draw something and I might critically look at it and say, oh, it's not that great. But surprisingly, if I put that drawing away and come back a week or two later, I go, hey, that's pretty good. So yes, just got to turn off that critical voice and accept it is what it is. And you get better. Like Paula said, it's practice. You do get better. You have to be sort of doing it regularly.
Yeah. Yeah, practice helps. Now I'm just mindful of the time. We've gone to 11:30, and I think what we might do is I'll encourage people to go and check out Paula's website, where you can find most of these images. So if you want more inspiration, I will recommend that you go there, and I think we'll sign off now. Paula, you are on mute. I might just ask you to unmute so we can have one last farewell from you to everybody, and thank you so much for joining us, and I hope you all have a wonderful weekend and get to spend some time out doing some nature journaling and drawing.
Yeah, thank you, Sarah and Suzanne, and everyone that tuned in. Yeah, get out in nature, it's good for you.
That's great. Thanks so much, everyone. I'm going to let everybody sign off now, so thanks so much. Have a good weekend.